Hello, welcome to Pyramid Knits. My name is Liz, and this is a knitting craft cast where I talk about my crafty projects, knitting, some sewing sometimes, very occasionally crochet, lots of natural dyeing as well. I am coming to you today from my home outside of Taos, New Mexico. And if you want to find me digitally, you can find me on the interwebs as Pyramid Dye Works on Instagram and also on Etsy. So it has been a hot minute since the last time I sat down to do this. I've been off and on podcasting now for quite a few years. I think quite a few years, my God. Yeah, very off and on. I usually end up taking about 6 months out of the year off. That seems to be a theme, and I seem to be noticing that it's around springtime into summer, which totally makes sense. I think I'm just noticing my natural sort of crafty cycle, you know? It does seem like spring going into summer, I kind of lose my knitting mojo. I had about there at the beginning of the summer where I got really into spinning for a minute, and I spun up like 3 or 4 skeins of yarn in a couple of weeks. Stop it. I know. I'm sorry. My dog keeps licking himself and he's sitting right next to the tripod. So I'm sure it's in the background. Yeah, you don't have to do that. You can just sit there quiet. Yeah. And then it's been kind of a heat wave for all of July. It is now August, and just like clockwork, yesterday, August 1st, was nice and overcast and a little bit cooler. I got a few raindrops earlier, and I have definitely heard some thunder around the area this afternoon, so hopefully we'll get some afternoon rain showers and cool things down and water the plants. Yeah, it has been a very dry summer here compared to averages. We usually get monsoon rains every afternoon through July and August. We had like nothing in July. It's been very hot and very dry. So I am welcoming slightly cooler temps and a little bit of rain. The overcast yesterday really helped get some of my crafting mojo going again. I've recently started a test knit, which really has me excited. It also has me on a deadline, which means that I have to knit. It's required. So everything else can just be put to the side because that is a priority now. Clearly. Let's see. I don't have any finished objects to show you because I probably finished some things since the last time I podcasted, but honestly, I don't think I have. Like maybe a pair of socks and maybe a hat or something. But I really haven't been doing all that much knitting. I'm definitely feeling like it's August. That means September is almost here, which means it's fall basically. So I need to get on my fall knitting, right? So I have some nice sweaters to wear this fall. So I guess, yeah, let's just jump into works in progress. And then I'll talk about dream knitting. And then I'll talk about yarns that I've dyed that I just put up in my shop in case anyone is interested in some naturally dyed yarns. So, first up for my whips. I had been talking about this on my last podcast, if you remember back that far, whenever that was. It was before my birthday because I was talking about how I wanted to do this sweater as a birthday cast on, which I did, which was in the beginning of May. So that was May, June. That was 3 months ago. Amazing. I'll show you what I did. It's not a lot yet. And it is definitely been put aside. It is in hibernation already, which is disappointing, but I just didn't really have the brain capacity. It's a pretty complicated pattern. So I am knitting The Poet by Sari Nordlund. It was in Lane magazine issue 6 or something. I have it back here, I'll grab it. So if I've started at the top, this is gonna be my neckline or something like that. It's joined in the round. I have 15 or 16 rows knit so far. And you can see the pattern showing up here. Hopefully I'm not just flashing everybody. So, yoink. It is number 6 in here. So actually, I think what I said in my last podcast is I was going to cast on this selenite, which is the pattern here on the front, which is a nice cardigan. Oh, oopsie. You can see the little schematic there. But I swatched with this yarn for this project and realized that the yarn was not going to work with the yardage that I had at the gauge that they were calling for. Because this was actually supposed to be knit at a DK gauge, and this is a sport weight yarn. It's really a lofty yarn. It's woolen spun. My neighbors just got them. It's quite a lofty yarn. It is woolen spun, so I thought that it would bloom up in blocking, but in fact it did the opposite. It shrank up in blocking. And let me see if I have a tag. I should have a tag somewhere in one of these. So I got this yarn whenever I was up in Chicago earlier this year, and I went to YarnCon. And this was from a yarn producer based in Traverse City, Michigan, Why Not Fibers. And they had a lot of really interesting blends with local wools to them. And this one is Polypay Targhee Cross. Oh, they actually say it's fingering weight and 400 yards per ball. So I bought, I think 3, so I have 1,200 yards. Is that right? I'm not sure. Anyway, I figured out the math at the time. I basically figured out, oh, this is not gonna work for the selenite because this yarn is just shrinking back on itself so much. So I went and I looked into the Polypay Targhee breeds, and I've worked with Targhee before. I know it's a really nice lofty yarn. It's a merino derivative, so it's nice and soft, but it's generally grown in the Western US, which I love because I'm in the Western US. But Polypay I had never heard of. So I looked it up in my trusty Fleece and Fiber sourcebook. Love it. Very handy whenever I'm trying to learn about any new breed of sheep that I've never heard of. There's great information in here. And what I found out about Polypay in here is that they are special in the sense that they have like extra crimp, which means extra memory, which means when I blocked it, it sucked back in on itself really hard, really hard. See if I can't find the page. Yeah, so we've got the whole spread here on the Polypay sheet. Turns out the Polypay, this is my theory at least, as to why this yarn is being having so much memory. I think it's because of that Polypay content. It's my theory. So I was like, well, I gotta scratch the selenite. But there's another pattern in here that I have wanted to knit for a very long time. But it's also very challenging. I have seen other knitters, podcasters do this pattern, and it's always looks like it's a big challenge. So this is what I'm knitting instead. It's the Poet, and it has this really beautiful sort of cable and lace motif going down the front, which it's not actually cables, it's increases and decreases in lace. You can see some of the other pictures. So it's nice 3/4 length sleeves, boat neck. Love it. I don't like stuff up around my neck, clearly. I love a 3/4 length sleeve. It's especially in the climate that I live in, because even if it's cold, if the sun is out, it can feel warm. So it's always this sort of strange in-between feeling. So it's nice to not have the full sleeves and be able to let my arms breathe a little bit. It seems to help a lot of sweaters be more functional, particularly in the fall and things like that when it's, you know, not snowing. So yeah, I've made it 15 rows on this. It is challenging. And I just didn't have the brain space, so I set it aside and said I'll just come back to it probably in the fall. I have since signed up for and started a test knit, so, which is also challenging for that old noggin up here. It's not as complicated as this, I don't think, but it requires thought and a lot of finesse with the fingers. So I'll show you that next. And once I'm done with that one and I have my brain back, then I will move back to this. This knit is due, I think, at the end of September. So hopefully I will be coming back to this one in October. So my test knit. I went to the UK last year and I bought some John Arbon Yarnadelic, and I did not know what to do with it. I bought a sweater's quantity in the colorway Nobody Knows. It's beautiful and heathered, and it's one of those colors that it's like, it's a neutral because it has every other color in it, but it's like kind of a blue and kind of a green and kind of a gray. But as you're knitting it, you also see like pink and red and purples, and just like every color is in here. It's beautiful. I'm really enjoying working with it. Although I will say I'm finding this yarn to be quite splitty. I keep catching whenever I come on the next row around that I will have split a stitch and I kind of have to pass that back over. And also the pattern I'm working on has cables and bobbles, which requires you to get your needle underneath stitches that are already on a needle. Do you know what I mean? And it can get a little fiddly, and with a splitty yarn, it can get a little bit annoying, but it's just so darn pretty. So this is Sport Weight. It's 100% Falklands Corriedale. It's very nice. So I was just reading actually about yarn that comes from the Falkland Islands. It's kind of by default organic, just in the sense that there's no natural predators for the sheep on the Falkland Islands, so they don't have to use a lot of the extra pesticides and medications. They don't do muesling there to any of the sheep on the Falkland Islands. So if you get Falkland wool, it's actually like from really happy sheep who live in large fields and have a lot of space. And yeah, so I've done some spinning recently with Falkland wool and I really enjoyed it too. So this is Falkland Corriedale. The test knit I'm doing, right, take it back. Okay, so I bought this yarn last year and I didn't know what to do with it. It's gonna be for a sweater. I would know the sweater it was for when I saw it. And I kept looking and looking and I just couldn't find anything that fit this yarn, or it just wasn't speaking to me. It wasn't like, this is what I need to be. And then I was watching the Flossi podcast, and she was putting out a new version of a cardigan that she had designed, the Joanie cardigan, but as a pullover. And the yarn she was using for the sample was John Arbon Yarnadelic. And I was like, oh, interesting. And then I saw the sweater in question and I was like, oh, very interesting. That is relevant to my interests. I could see myself wearing that very much so. So I went a little bit crazy and applied for a test knit, which I have never done before. And I'm now test knitting and it's happening. There's a sweater happening. I see it. It doesn't look like much right now and it's trying to roll up on itself so you can't see anything. But I will show you here. It's a pullover. The front and the back are stockinette, essentially. It's gonna have a V-neck, but on the sides, there are these beautiful cable panels with baubles. And the thing I am loving so much, do you see this right here? This little cable cross right over the split hem join? I am obsessed, you guys, obsessed. It's so good. I love those little details. And yeah, so this being my first test knit, I was going through the pattern and at the little split hem join, I was reading through her instructions and I was like, oh, that's not the way I would do that. I would do a different kind of join and I would do a little cable cross so that it would be all nice and tidy. And I was like, I'm just gonna do what I would do. And then I had a breath and I was like, no, just do what the pattern says. It's fine. Don't start going rogue. Just do what the pattern says and, you know, maybe you'll learn something new and it'll be like, oh, actually the way that she said to do it looks great. And yes, I followed the pattern and it took a couple rows to get through it. And then I saw what she had done and I was like, oh, that's amazing. And I'm in love. I'm so in love with that. Yeah, so there's a lot of baubles. There's a lot of cables. The baubles are kind of hurting my hands. Thankfully, you only have to do them not all the time, not like every row or anything. You get several rows in between the baubles where you're doing other things. But whenever you have those bauble rows, oh, there's a lot of them and they're very tiny. They're very cute, very delicate, but very tiny. And yeah, trying to finagle my needle tips, even though I am using the Chiaogu lace, like those are nice sharp tips. I'm splitting the yarn a lot and it's just kind of annoying, but it's so pretty. And you can really see on the stockinette portions, just the variation in the color of the yarn. It's really good. Yeah. So this is underway, the Joanie pullover. Yes, so far I am loving the pattern. I would definitely not say it's a beginner pattern. There's a lot of sort of charts and setting things up. I mean, to get those kind of details on every size, no less. So there's like a gazillion charts because there's like a chart for each size. It's amazing. But yeah, now that I am in the pattern and I have it going, I've got the chart memorized at this point and I can just read my knitting. So I'm just off to the races. And I'm trying really hard to work on this for a little bit every morning, plus a little through the day and plus a little bit in the evening. Just keep trying to add on those rows so I can finish in time. But yeah, it's through the end of September and it's right now the beginning of August. So I have 2 months to get through this and I think I can do that. Yeah. Oh, and I am knitting this on size US 4, which is what the, yes it is 4s, 3.5 millimeter, which is what the pattern calls for. My gauge was a little bit tight, but also I was a little bit in between sizes. So I'm just going with it and I think it'll be fine. Yeah, so this is my sort of, I need to work on this whip. I have like 10 pairs of socks going right now, you guys. I'm only gonna show you one though, because all the rest are just like boring socks. So as often happens in the summer is I end up turning to sock projects because they're small, I can stuff them in my bag, I can pull them out, you know, if I'm out at the pub, if I'm out at the river, if I'm sitting, waiting somewhere, whatever. I mean, I always have socks in my bag, but it seems like they get a little bit more love in the summertime because they're not a sweater on my lap, right? They also don't require all that much brain power, and I seem to have less brain power in the summer. So anyway, these are the only socks I'm going to show you today because this is hand spun yarn, y'all. I spun my own sock yarn. Like, what? Who am I? I mean, obviously. But still, I spun my own sock yarn. It's like blowing me away. This is a 3-ply. It's so good. Oh, and I am loving knitting with it. I love spinning it. I'm loving knitting with it. I just want to spin sock yarn now. That's all I want to do. This is getting all discombobulated. There we go. Oh gosh, you're gonna ask me who this fiber is from. It's either from Tea Fueled Living or Your Fibery Godmother. I think it's Tea Fueled Living. Beautiful colorway. It's, whoops, I can't remember what it's called. I think it's like a wet stegosaurus or something like that, which I think it's supposed to be like Shrinky Dinks. Remember those? The color of the little shrinking stegosaurus. So my intention with this yarn when I spun it was to do a traditional 3-ply, spin all of them end to end in the same direction and ply all of them in the same direction so that I would have actual stripes. Except that the first ply I spun was a little bit thicker than the second and the third. So I ran, as I started plying them, this is where it started out. You can see it all started, everything was on the same color. And then it slowly starts to shift out of sync until it starts to look almost like a fractal. Because the second and third ply, honestly, they ended at almost the exact same spot. So I did really good with consistency on those. But the first ply I did, the first bobbin I spun, was definitely a bit thicker and it ran out a lot sooner than the other two did. So it's got a weird sort of striping color effect. And yeah, the second sock is gonna be way more green than yellow, definitely. I keep weighing this because I'm scared I'm not gonna have enough yarn for a second sock, but my scale says this is still 55 grams. And I'm like, I didn't weigh this when I started. I'm assuming it was about 100. Not over 100, certainly, which means if I have 55 grams and this was like 95 to start maybe, then that means I've only used 40 something grams, so I totally have enough, right? But it looks really small. And unless I somehow started out with like 150 grams, which I did not, I should have enough for a second sock. It just doesn't look convincing to me. I'm a little bit worried. But the scale says it's fine, so we're gonna trust the math and carry on. So yeah, I'm gonna go a few more rows around on this and then I will bind off. They're not gonna be quite as long on the leg as my normal socks. I will usually take the leg of the sock at least up to like where the toe is to be equal in length before I start the cuff. And a lot of times I'll knit all the way to the end of the toe and then do a cuff if I want them to be a little bit taller for like boots or whatever. So it'll be a little bit shorter, but that's fine. And I think this is probably about a sport weight yarn. I never checked because I'm not that kind of a spinner yet. I'll get there. And I am doing Andrea Mowry's Everyday Socks. I had tried to knit this pattern once in the past. I was on vacation when I was doing it, and the heel just made no sense to me whatsoever, and I frogged the heel and just like did my own heel and just continued on and said screw the pattern with those socks. But for these, I don't know, it just felt like the right pattern for these socks. The 2x2 rib, it's super bouncy and squishy. It's a little bit thicker than your average sock yarn. And I am knitting on a size larger needle as well. It's a US 2, which is 2.75 millimeters. I usually knit my socks on US 1. And yeah, this time I did her, the everyday sock pattern with the Fleegle heel. And I even have a different stitch count than she recommends because I'm using a different sock weight and a different needle size. But since they're toe up, I was able to just try them on my foot until I was like, okay, yeah, that seems about right, and continue on. I did make them too wide at first, and I had to frog back, but they fit really good right now. And so I went through the instructions for the Fleegle heel this time, and I was like, this makes so much sense. I don't know why I found it so confusing. And it was like super easy, and it looks really nice, and it actually fits really well. So I think I'll be trying Fleegle heels again in the future. What do you know? I just needed to not be like traveling international solo and trying to figure out a new heel. Like, I think that was too much for my brain. But yeah, apparently sitting on the couch in my house, I can figure out a new heel. So that's good. So yeah, I'm really excited to start the second sock of these. They're definitely going to be cousins, not sisters. Or maybe sisters, but not twins. I don't know. Anyway, they feel really good on my feet too. I'm super excited for like the fall and wearing these in boots. And I'm curious how it's gonna wear too, because this is non-superwash, no nylon. It's 100% Falkland. Is that true? It might be BFL. No, I lied, it's BFL, 100% BFL. Blue-faced Leicester, which is a nice long wool. I really like blue-faced Leicester anytime I've used it in the past. It is generally considered to be a really good wool for a sock yarn because it has such a long staple, so it's gonna be more durable. And I spun this with the intention of making socks. So it's 3-ply and it has a high twist. And I'm really happy with it. I really need to get one of those spin control cards so I can like see what my twist angle is and everything. One of these days. Anyway, super enjoyable. I really want to get some more fiber that I can spin into some more sock yarn because this is way too much fun. Whips. Do I have other whips? Whips. I don't think so. I think everything else is in my imagination at this point. I have swatched, so I'll show you the swatch. Well, first off, I'll tell you what happened, is I bought this dress recently. Cute little summer dress, I couldn't pass it up. Y'all, it has pockets. It has pockets and it's cute and flowy and it's comfortable and the back is all like smocked elastic, so it fits and I can breathe. It's amazing. So yeah, I wore this the other day, came home, tossed it aside like I do. You do not want to see the rest of my house. I'm terrible at putting away laundry. Terrible. And shoes, there's shoes everywhere. Don't look at the floor. Don't look at the floor. Oh dear. I can see 4 pairs of shoes from my stool right now. I was like that as a kid too. Oh, it drove my mom crazy. There would just be shoes stacked on the stairs. She's like, I'm not taking them up to your room. I'll leave them on the steps. And it would just be shoes all the way up the stairs. God. Anyway, I bought a cute new dress. I came home and I threw it down on a pile of stuff, which happened to be my giant basket of yarn that I had just finished dyeing and photographing. And I was walking through and I looked down and I was like, that looks real nice. That matches real good. Oh, I like that. Oh my, I have an idea. I should make myself a cardigan to go with my cute new dress. I know which cardigan, the Corin cardigan from Rebecca of Crayabea podcast. I really wanted to make that. It looks amazing. It's for worsted weight. This is worsted weight. It's a worsted weight cardigan. It's gonna go so fast. Oh my God. And it's all lace. So I was like, okay, this needs to happen. I feel a little bit bad pillaging my own stash, my own store, because I dye in small batches. I do like 5 skeins at a time, which is like, you know, 1 sweater and maybe an accessory or 2 for each color. And I'm like, well, I need a shop sample, right? But then I'm gonna end up using like most of the yarn, or at least half of it. I think I looked at the yardage. I'll probably use 2 skeins, so I'll still have a few left for the shop, but that just means I'll have to dye more. Because if I liked it so much that I wanted to make a cardigan out of it, somebody else is gonna like it so much too. Anyway, so I decided I'm gonna make the Corin cardigan. I'm gonna do short sleeve, V-neck. Yes, short sleeve V-neck. The pattern gives you options to do a crew neck or a V-neck, short sleeve or long sleeve, and you can kind of mix and match as you please. It seems like a lot of her patterns are like that, which I really enjoy. And this will be the first pattern of hers that I've knit, I believe. Yeah. I've wanted to knit everything she's put out so far, but this is the first one where the timing is just gonna work out, I think. It is dyed with Osage Orange and Indigo. And it is on my worsted base. It's 100% non-superwash US grown Targhee wool. It's very lovely, very bouncy, very squishy. Feels super soft, like definitely next to skin, totally fine. So I didn't have any of this wound up, but I did have a little bit of a different colorway. And this is the colorway Brick. And that is done with Osage Orange and Cochineal. So I went ahead and swatched in this color, since I already had some wound up where the yarn had broken, so it was like, it's a short skein. So I was like, I'll just swatch with this since it's sitting here. It's the same base, different color. Which, you know, I have heard that different colors can change the gauge very subtly. We'll find out. So this is the swatch for the Corin cardigan. Very simple, very effective, very fast. The swatch knit up so quickly. I can't remember now if it was on 7s or 8s. I did whatever the pattern called for. And again, I'm a little bit tight on the gauge. I hit the row gauge exactly, but my stitch gauge is a little bit tight. And again, I fall kind of in between sizes, so I'm just gonna go with it. And plus, this is such a lacy pattern. Lace stretches so much, like it's gonna be so forgiving. So I'm not super concerned about it. I don't want it to fit super loose, but I don't necessarily want it to be like negative ease either. So anyway, I think, oops. Yeah, imagine that pattern in this color. Lovely, yes. I know, I also want to make one in red now that I did the swatch too. Just like, God, it's so nice. And it's another one of those things. I started knitting up my own yarn and I was like, I am in love with my own yarn. It's so freaking pretty. Yeah, I was really enjoying working with this. I'll come back to that. And then I had another shirt that I also threw about and realized, oh, hey, that'll work really well with that too. So this is a top that I sewed. It is the Clark top from Seamwork. It's yeah, super basic little tank top. It gives you lots of options with this pattern. I've sewed it a couple of times now. And it gives you options to make it in a knit or a weave fabric. Yeah, lots of versatility. Doesn't take much yardage. I really like it. I think it's cute. Anyway, but yeah, I was like, oh, that'd go great with that too. And you know, this has a deep V in the front and the back, so this will really extend this garment outside of high summer if I have a little lacy cardigan to go over the top. Yeah, so this top is cropped. I know I would wear it with this. I know I would wear it with this dress, which has a high waistline, so I would also want it pretty cropped on here. So it shouldn't take me too much yardage to get that sweater done. Not sure when I'll cast on. One of these days I'll get a little wild hair and pull out my yarn winder and wind up the yarn. That's the thing that's holding me back at this point. It just started raining. I don't know if you can hear it. So that's my next cast on, I think. And then, ooh, it's really starting to rain now. Pretty sure, yeah, all my cats are inside. We're good. Everyone's indoors, everyone's dry. So my next cast on after that, I guess, or maybe concurrently, you know, because I did, oh my God, you guys, I did the same thing. I had this, I had this handspun lying around. This, I believe, is 100% Falkland, I think. And it is from a dyer out of Las Cruces. I got this at my local yarn shop. I cannot remember the name of her company, but I'll put it down in the description. Anyway, really, really pretty color. It was called Arizona, the colorway. Teals and oranges. I mean, I'm a sucker, what can I say? And I spun this with the intention of making sock yarn, but I think I made it a bit too thick because whenever I wound it off, I counted my yardage and there's only 200 yards in here, which it did seem like it came off the spindle pretty quick, off the bobbin pretty quick. So I was like, shit, that's really not enough to make socks. Like, I must have just gone too thick with it. But I love it. It's so pretty. And I did it as a true fractal 3-ply. So I think I split the first ply twice and then maybe 3 times. And then I didn't write it down. So I was like, oh, lace sigh. Whatever will I do with this? And then I was eyeing Andrea Mowry's Rhinebeck sweater this year, specifically the vest version of her sweater, which is the tessellated vest. And I was like, I kind of need that in my life. I have a couple vests, and I didn't realize until I knit a vest that like actually properly fit me. The first one I made was a little bit short. Yeah. Anyway, the second one, I wore it all the time. It turned into such a versatile piece of clothing for me. Shocked. Anyway, I need more vests. So I was looking at the tessellated vest and looking at the yardage and thinking I would really like to do it with handspun, but I don't know what colors, like just getting in this sort of decision paralysis mode with a project where it's like, I can do anything I want. That's too many choices. But knowing that I wanted to use handspun for at least some of it, as the pattern calls for spin cycle, dyed in the wool, which is like a barber pole yarn, which you can achieve with handspun as well. So I was checking the yardage and yeah, one of those contrast colors was about 200 yards. And I was like, hold up a second, wasn't this about 200 yards? Hello, handspun, that's so beautiful that I don't know what to do with. with a fractal gradient going on. And then I thought, well, maybe I can pair that with some of my natural dyes. So I wandered into my my yarn shop, which is a giant plastic bin, and I was like, I wonder what it would match with. And I was like, oh, look at that. Oh my goodness. So this is my fingering weight base. It is a 90% superwash US grown Targhee wool and 10% nylon. It is fingering weight, but it can definitely like plump up to a sport. It's quite a bouncy yarn, especially for being a superwash. It still holds a lot of body in it. And I was like, well, those just go perfect. So also for the tessellated vest, you need a third yarn. And she used like a fuzzy yarn, which I'm a little bit, I don't really care. I have some like tan Surrey alpaca in my stash, which might be fine with this. It might pick up on some more of these sort of orangey yellows into neutrals that are mixed in here. It might not. I don't know what to do for a third color. You guys, you have to help me. What should I do for a third color? Looking through a lot of the projects, it looks like a lot of them would have like two colors that were relatively monochrome with one sort of pop. So I'm like, well, maybe like an orange, but I don't know if I want it to pop that much. I don't know. What do you think? Third color. Comment below, thank you. Or message me on Instagram or whatever. Yeah. So I do have some new yarn up in my shop if anybody is interested. Unfortunately, that was my very last skein of, I forgot to tell you, the colorway is aquatic. I'm taking it for myself. Sorry. I need to order some more of this base and then I will dye up this color again. It is dyed with indigo. And yes. So I have 2 new colors up in the shop right now. There will be more coming either this weekend or early next week, probably. I'm just gonna kind of add in colors as I have them ready to go. And these are the 2 that are in the shop right now. You have seen both of these colorways represented earlier in this program on my worsted base. These are both on my sock base. So these are both 90% superwash Targhee, 10% nylon, 437 yards, I think. Sure, it'll be down below. Honeydew and brick are the 2 colors that are up in the shop right now. Again, brick is dyed with Osage orange and cochineal, and honeydew is dyed with Osage orange and indigo. And Osage orange is a tree that grows native, kind of like Midwesty Appalachia type area. It's a common tree out there that way. I actually got my Osage orange as waste sawdust from a woodworking shop in Tennessee. So yeah, I'm happy about that too. Yeah, so those 2 are up in the shop right now if anybody needs a little brightness in their lives right now. And I have one more project that I can talk about. I have a friend here in Taos who does natural pigments and paints, which is amazing and like totally collaborative, right? He's got a dye garden down in the south end of town. It's amazing. I've been out there to help a few times. I need to get out there more often, but you know, we all have busy schedules. Anyway, he's not a fiber person. He's a paint person. He makes his own pigments and paints with them. And it's beautiful. He does really great work. So he doesn't know really anything about fiber. He's definitely interested in it because it's all sort of tied in with that whole ethos of, you know, making things from the earth right for yourself, right? So he picked up some churro and some alpaca churro from our local mill. There's a stick in this one. That didn't come from the mill, that just came from one of my animals, I'm sure. We do have a local mill here out in Mora, New Mexico. It's just over the mountains from Taos, about 45 minutes. I have never actually been there. I really need to go check it out. So anyway, he got some, this is a alpaca churro blend, and this is pure churro. Churro is a really popular fiber in this area because it's been cultivated here for centuries. Churro is a fiber that naturally doesn't have as much lanolin as other sheep breeds do, so it actually requires less water to process. And the sheep themselves don't require as much water to survive, and they can eat the sagebrush and be perfectly happy. And they're very well suited to quite a harsh climate that we have here in the high desert. Churro wool is also great for outerwear, blankets, coats. You don't want that stuff touching your skin. It's very, very rough and very rustic, but it's very warm and it'll keep you dry. So yeah, traditionally there's a really, really deep weaving tradition in this area of the country that goes back thousands of years. And churro wool is a big part of that. So it's often used in rug making, blanket making, that kind of thing. But yeah, my friend Scott, the pigment hunter, I'll link him below, picked this up and heard alpaca, and he was like, oh, that sounds soft. And came to me with these 2 bags of fiber, and he was like, can you make a hat out of this? I was like, well, yeah, but what kind of hat do you want? Like, there's too many options. Kind of ran into that situation again. So I have this as a project, which I have not really gotten any creative feedback from him. So I'm going to start forging ahead on this project, and I'm going to mordant, I think, half and half of the yarns, or the roving. And then I will naturally dye those in, I don't know what colors yet. I'm going to have to talk to Scott about it. Then I will blend those fibers. I'm going to keep half and half neutral, I think, natural colored. And then I can blend up some bats and spin up some yarn and knit up a hat. And I did tell him I'll do a liner, and I have plenty of pure alpaca and like merino fleece that I'll do a liner out of that, and your ears will be nice. You don't have to worry. But yeah, that's going to be like a mega hat with churro on the outside and like a merino alpaca liner on the inside. I'm very excited. Yeah, it just seems like a fun project to be able to say, okay, I'm going to take this from fleece to finished object in, one project. Because a lot of times I will make the yarn or, dye the roving, and then it's like, well, what do I do with it now? I didn't really have anything in mind when I started that. Yeah, which is how I end up with ideas like this. Tell me, third color. I don't know. Oh dear, there's yarn just rolling all over the place. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now, and all of my fiber and crafty goodness. I've got sewing projects with an ever-expanding queue that I need to get back to. I want to do some more spinning. I want to do more dyeing. I want to do more knitting. I want to do more of all of it. And there's not that much time. So I'm just gonna keep plugging away. One stitch at a time. Just get one more row, and eventually it'll get done. So thank you so much for joining me today. Please like and subscribe, all those things, the YouTubey things. And I hope that I will see you back here again next time. And I hope that it will be sooner than whatever, April It's been like 5 months or something ridiculous. Cause yeah, we're heading back into the cool weather. It's gonna come. It's gonna come. We did just get a nice little rain there while I was talking, so it's over now. But I think I might go pop out to the garden and see how things are looking out there. I planted some fall seeds the other day, late summer fall seeds, some lettuces and spinaches and radishes and things like that. Some more arugula. So I'm gonna go out and see if any of that has sprouted. And I will see you guys next time. Until then, happy crafting. Bye.